I've been hearing about what the Scottish Parliament have been up to with this gender recognition reform bill, which seems to be causing a lot of outrage, particularly among women. And I can understand why. So I just thought I would mention it in case people were not aware of it, and possibly what some of the difficulties in the future might be. So if you're one of these people who believes, for whatever reason, that you're in the wrong gender, and I'm not making a comment about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, somebody like me who's a bit old-fashioned perhaps doesn't quite understand why you would, but that's just me. If you are one of those people, in the UK, according to the government website, if you want to change your gender, and you might want to do this to have a certificate that says that you can do this so that you can change your passport and your driving license, although I don't think that you can change it on your birth certificate, but don't quote me on that. This gender recognition certificate, you need to be 18 to apply for it. You also need to have been diagnosed medically with gender dysphoria, which is a condition. And I assume that one or several doctors would have to make that diagnosis before you could be recommended to having it, so you're fully understood. And then also that you've got to have lived in this gender for 2 years previously. Now, not quite sure how you go about proving that you've lived in this gender, whether that's a reflection of your, I don't know, your life on social media with pictures of you performing as this gender. I'm not too sure, but that's the theory. And then also you've got to affirm that you're planning on remaining in this gender and you're not going to switch back in the near future. So this is a one-time situation. Now, so there's a bit of criteria here that if you are somebody who wishes to change your gender, you've got to go through all of this. I would think that that was pretty much a minimum thing. You wouldn't want to relax that too much. But apparently in Scotland, the new bill, which has yet to go to royal assent as far as I understand, and so it could be stopped, that's been signed off by the Scottish government, is that they've relaxed this a hell of a lot, so that now you only have to be 16 to apply for this, which is rather worrying because, you know, at 16 you can't vote. I don't think you can get married at 16. I don't think you can go into a pub and order alcohol at 16, but you can decide to fiddle about with your gender. Now, they've relaxed that in Scotland. So I'm just wary of that because I think a lot of children, people at 16 are still children, 16, 17, you know, that sort of age, 15, 16, you know, they're still children, and some people mature at different ages, may not really be thinking straight. The other thing is you don't need, the Scottish Parliament have deemed, you don't need a medical diagnosis, which even if you dropped it down to 16, you'd think that at least a few doctors would have to see you just to check that you're not doing this because of a fad. But no, apparently you don't need any medical experience or examination, particularly to say that you might have the gender dysphoria. So that's not an issue. And instead of having to live in the gender that you propose to go in, apparently you only have to do that now for 3 months as opposed to 2 years. So very quickly, it would seem that you could, let's say, be convinced by society, media, friends, or it could just be I don't know, one of those fads that you go through, that you grow through and think, oh, I quite fancy this. Now, we all go through different fads and get over ourselves. Some people, it isn't a fad. I accept, of course, there's going to be those that this isn't. But it would be a worry that young people potentially could not only get this certificate very easily, but could then go on and mutilate their bodies and do something that they later regret. And checks and balances surely have got to happen. So this is all very confusing. Also, one of the other worries is that people, of course, men, and I'm using men to women because it's usually that way round, you could have some nefarious men, undesirable men, who perhaps like, I'm trying to put this delicately, who have, I don't know, a perverted mindset, shall we say, and wish to access women's safe spaces. Now, if you're a woman and you don't want men around, you can like men as you know, as anybody would, but you might not want men around in certain areas, particularly if you're undressing, where you're feeling vulnerable, you want to have a conversation with like-minded people. You want to be able to, in a place where you can exclude men. Well, if it becomes so easy that a man effectively can jump through the hoops and present a certificate and say, I'm a woman now, I don't actually have to present as a woman, I still got my big beard and I'm just wearing a frock, or not even bothering to do that, but I have a bit of paper that says you can't say I'm not a woman. It just seems, as I say, I'm a bit old-fashioned. It just seems a little bit strange, but I can see that from a woman's point of view, that it would be quite intimidating, frightening, potentially, but also you don't know who that person is. He could be having an evil intent. And so I think the whole thing is a little worrying, and I do hope that they can at least, at the very least, halt this for the time being and think again. And just decide whether 16 is too young, whether you really do need to have some sort of medical examination, and perhaps be more convinced that you're, by living a longer period than the necessary 3 months. It seems rather too hasty, in my humble opinion.